Hey, it's happy Monday to you because it's the Awake Space Astrology Podcast. I'm Laurie Rivers, your host, here to help you with some inspiration to get those aspirations out into the world. And now, the tide might be turning. I don't think we're going to get everything we want, but I'm hoping we all get inspired so we can take our aspirations out into the world. So grab your tea, get your coffee, get your matcha, get your iced tea, your iced coffee, your hot cocoa if you're in Australia because it's cold down under. Wherever you are listening in the world, and especially to my friends who tune in from countries that the only reason you'd be tuning in is you're in intelligence. Get comfy, sit back, and are we going to have an interesting conversation? Because there's more change on the way. Is it good? Is it bad? That remains to be seen, and it really depends on who you are. And I just kind of want to remind you that the times we're living in, it was always going to be chaotic. It was always going to be massive systemic change. It wouldn't matter who's in charge, not really, because the changes would be happening one way or another. And I know you have a hard time conceiving, like it couldn't possibly be the same if, Harris went. And yeah, actually we could be in real similar situations. It would just come from a different angle. It would be just as chaotic. And honestly, anybody who's not in a position of leadership right now is kind of lucky because we're looking at regime change coming as a theme throughout the summer. No, don't get your hopes up, people in the States. It probably isn't what you want. I do see a health crisis. Like I said, by August, in the summer, he could have already had it. Modern medicine makes those predictions very, very difficult. I still don't see him doing well past spring of 2026. That's been my standard prediction since like 21 or 22. And by 21 and 22, I mean 2021, 2022. That's just the way those transits look. But who knows at this point? We are in uncharted territory in a lot of ways. And so we're moving into some very, very interesting events as we go forward. But that doesn't mean it's bad. It doesn't mean it's bad. It can be good. So whether we're going to work together, taking the kids to the park, planning our holiday weekends, getting ready for Canada Day, getting ready for Bastille Day, getting ready for the 4th of July, or whatever hootenanny you're looking at, Belgium's national holiday is the 21st of July. I'll talk about that later. I'll explain how I know that. Anyway, whatever we're doing together, whether we're folding the clothes, going shopping, we will get perfect parking if we're driving. We would just totally will, because that's what I give you. But regardless of that, we're doing it together, and we're going to hold hands as we go through the podcast and learn how to use some of the really, really interestingly good energy that's up on deck. And, what happens in the outer world does not have to correspond with what's going on in the inner world. And the more we deal with what's inside of us, the better our outer experience becomes as well. Because remember, as above, so below, well, as within, so without. And with that, let's get this podcast started. Oh my gosh. So July is a month. We've got the Venus-Uranus conjunction on July 3rd. That's not a bad thing. I'll talk about it a little bit later, but we've got the Venus-Uranus conjunction, and then Venus pops into Gemini, which I'm excited about because that means I'm going to have my Venus return soon. It's an interesting one. We've got Neptune stationing retrograde as well. That's some good news because when Neptune stations retrograde, it's more like the truth spills out. So we'll see some beans getting spilled. So that's always good. There'll be information that comes out, so that will be very interesting. There's not a whole lot of illusion going on with Neptune and Aries, but whatever there is gets ripped away in the retrograde. Saturn's going to be going retrograde pretty soon. That's not a bad thing. It heads back into Pisces for its last little stint in Pisces starting September 1st. And so it'll go retrograde this month. It's usually retrograde for about, 3 months, 3.5 months. So not too long. We've got Uranus. It's moving into Gemini and it's going to be trine with Pluto. That's going to be exciting. I've been saying all along, thank God for Pluto retrograde, because we've got so much crazy energy going on right now that it's not my favorite. Having Pluto retrograde is kind of saving our skin. So these retrogrades kind of pull us back again from the brink. Remember, I said in my 2025 year ahead, last year, it's going to look like we're heading towards global thermonuclear war or World War III, and we pull back. And notice that's exactly what happened in June. July is also very spicy on the outer world level. I'm sure we'll see the conflict start up again with Israel breaking ceasefires. That's kind of one of their MOs. I've been kind of quiet about things because I have family in the region and I didn't want my daughter to have a hard time. But it's just at this point, when you look, and I see this as somebody who's specialized in international relations, especially in the Middle East, when I see the rhetoric and the bald-faced idealism and the lies that are being told, like we all see reality, the immense amount of gaslighting going on of like, well, we're not annihilating anybody, they're terrorists, and it's like, are you kidding me? It's a 6-month-old, there's been a lot of excuses, and I'm not an apologist for Iran. I'm not a big fan of their regime. However, I also do not believe that a preemptive strike is a defensive move. That comes from the best offense. The best defense is a good offense. And that would be like me carrying a baseball bat and walking around with my baseball bat. And anytime any man looked like he could hit me, I would take his kneecaps out. Now, as delicious as that prospect sounds, I think I would be charged with assault if I went around. I said, but men, we know men are the aggressors. We know men are more likely to hit a woman than a woman is to hit a man and do absolute damage. Not that women don't hit people. They do. But we know, you see, and it almost be more justified. Not saying do it, don't do it. Okay. But that kind of logic is what really fries my beans. Okay. And watching what's happening in the United States has been very, very, very frustrating because the system has obviously, it isn't working. It's been taken over. We've had a bloodless coup. It becomes very, very obvious. That's the coup I was seeing. It was bloodless. I don't see military intervention at this time because, and especially if you are listening, anyone in the DIA, anyone who is working in the military, I don't think they have the guts to actually do what's right. I think they are part of the problem, and I think Eisenhower was correct about the military-industrial complex at this time. So now here's the thing. What do you do? Where do you go? Not a lot of places, folks, because this is global. It's global. So get as safe as you can. Get to a place where you are socially at least supported. You have allies, you have a community. That's going to be your best bet. But there's a lot of stuff going on throughout the world. Am I saying these things to scare you? No, I'm not. But it appears to be the reality we have in front of us. Now, with all this change energy coming up, I'm going to say dictatorships have a really hard time between now and when Saturn goes direct. Goody goody gumdrops. And Uranus changing out of Taurus into Gemini. Now, I know everybody's talking about 1939, 1940, and fine, but that's not what I'm talking about. Uranus is the planet of disruption, of innovation, invention, and genius. And it's going to be trine Pluto in Aquarius. And I think we will see a lot more technology issues, drones, AI, and you want to learn how to leverage it. I talked a lot about that in my 2020. I talked a lot about that in my 2026 year ahead that I did on the 26th. I talked a lot about that in my 2026 year ahead that I did back on June 21st. That recording is now been sent out. In fact, they got 2 recordings. They got the recording of the live event plus the Q&A, and that went out, and everybody check your spam if you didn't get it, okay? A lot of people found theirs in the spam. And then it's up in the Patreon shop. If you buy the recording and you hadn't registered for the event, okay, so if you're buying it out of my Patreon shop, it does not give you access to the November event. That's when I dial in a little more into detail because we have a little more context. The June one is super fun because I have no context whatsoever. And sometimes I have to update it towards the end of the year. Sometimes it stays the same. So it's pretty interesting. Some of it's like thematic, and I'll be like, hey, this is what's up. Like I saw a lot of illusion, delusion, and I saw a lot of Virgin Mary energy for the spring. Well, right around the Pope's death, where did he pick to be buried? You know, the what was it? The Basilica of Mary Major. And the Pope Leo went to a St. Mary's school, you know, was born in a St. Mary's hospital. So Mary was up on deck. So it can be thematic like that. And it can be also as specific as me bringing up that Iran and Israel would have an issue this year. So we're not doomed and we're not screwed. I just want you to understand this. But we are in a time where, just like I've been saying for years, you've got to be actively involved. You've got to be actively involved, and you have to really be able to stand firm in your truth. And being actively involved does not mean you have to hit the streets protesting. That is one thing. You can be involved in your city council. You can be involved with your library board. You can be involved in your county election board, which is probably the most important thing. Because if they're trying to get rid of elections, understand that it's counties that run those. And everybody looks at the federal level when you need to be looking right down into the grassroots level. I know a lot of people are asking me to do Mom Donnie's chart. No, I'm not. If I do one guy, I got to do another guy. I don't want to do a bunch of charts, guys. I am teaching a summer school this July, and this whole week I'm finalizing all the slides. I have the workbooks all done. In the Align and Thrive summer program, which you can still sign up for, it's super exciting. Remember, patrons, you saved your juicy discount until the 30th. I'm not extending that. I might put out another one, but it won't be as juicy. So if you want those big savings, do it now. But I'm super excited about we're doing finding how to find your side gig or career using astrology, healing the money wound using astrology, professional development, authentic content creation, and marketing magic. All from July 8th through the 30th. Okay, we took the first week is because everybody's going to be like on vacation. I have a July birthday, okay? I know everybody fucking goes on vacation because nobody would come to my parties as a kid. It really sucked, except my babysitter, Debbie, and she would bring me really cool cupcakes. But I know everybody else is going to be busy doing stuff. So we start in that... July 8th will be the first professional development class. And then that's going to be fun. You find out more about that on the wokeastrology.com website. And the reason why I'm doing this is I've been saying for almost 30 years now, with this time of massive systemic change, it's super, super important to get your stuff together, you know, to be more entrepreneurial, to be more self-reliant, to be more interdependent, but also independent. Because I know everybody's like, rugged individualism. And I've said it too. There's a big difference between me, myself, and I and being fully self-centered and somebody who is independent and self-starting and doesn't wait around for somebody to say, you're good enough. You've got style. You've got class. You've got what it takes. You're an it person. No. You need to be like, hey, I want to do this. I'm going to get started. And learning how to be a self-starter is really, really important. Just waiting around for permission is going to fuck you over this summer. Okay. And so that's why I'm hosting the summer sessions. You don't have to know anything about astrology. You do need to have an astrology chart for how to find your side gig and healing the money wound. And you need a chart that's set with a birth time. You need to know your birth time. Okay. If you need a rectification, meaning you don't know your birth time and you want a rectification, Susie Evolutionary is doing those sessions through wokeastrology.com. Check out the links in the show notes. Okay. If you're in Woke, or if you're in the Awake space, you save 40% on that. Okay. So I would take advantage. But anyway, it's a wild month and we need to grab our cosmic surfboards because I haven't decided, is it a riptide? Is it a tsunami? Is it a tsunami with a riptide? It might be a cosmic, not a whirlpool, but a water spout. Okay. It may be a cosmic cyclone because that's probably what it's going to feel like as we go through July, but not all of it's bad. But we're going to have whiplash this month. So without further ado, let's look at some patron shout outs. Let's do what's in the headlines. I'm going to cover July in general, not so much the what's in the headlines, because the magazine comes out on the 1st. The magazine comes out on the 1st. If you haven't seen the cover reveal, it's super cute. Super cute, I tell you. And it's a really pretty, it's very summery. I have over 3,200 photos from when I lived in Sedona. And all of them are good because that place is hard to take a bad picture in. But anyway, so there's that. How do I know that it's July 21st is Belgium's national holiday? Well, when I was an exchange student 40 freaking years ago in 1985, I turned 16 on Belgium's national holiday. I was an exchange student to Belgium, and their national holiday was the 21st of July. Also my birthday, and that was my sweet 16. And that was an experience. It was a very cool experience. So, and I had actually gotten kissed the week before by a cute boy named Arnaud. Yeah, his name was Arnaud. And he was très beau. It wasn't like a big smoochy kiss. I mean, it was a really sweet kiss on the lips, but there was no tongue. But I could still then, when people said, oh, sweet 16, never been kissed, go, no, I have been. Because I don't know if you remember, but when you're 16 and people are harassing you about that, it is really embarrassing and cringe. Okay. If cringe had been the term, we would have used it in 1985. Oh my God. You know, they had celebrated the 40th anniversary of Victory Day in Europe in 84. And so 85. Yeah. Yeah. Man. To think I used to look at people my age and go, oh, those old people, those old biddies. Well, I'm an old biddy now. I'm running the show. All right. Let's move on with the podcast. I don't know what I'm like. All right, let's talk about what's coming up in July 2025. It's a dynamic month. If you're a patron, you have access to the recording in the Patreon. Okay, so I made this a perk back, I believe in April, just because April, May, and June were collectively hitting the fan. July is kind of a mixed bag. There's good, there's bad, there's kind of be a chaos goblin and you'll be fine. But I just thought I'd go through the astrology that we have coming up. It's kind of interesting. Makes the month very interesting. And you're like, is it good? Is it bad? Well, it kind of depends on who you are, what your perspective is. You know, it's a mixed bag. So there's some booms. And those booms might go in a direction some of us think is a good thing. And there's some booms that make us go, So have you noticed people have gotten a little crazier? Well, it's going to get even a little more wacky. I kind of blame COVID, the mismanagement of COVID, because COVID isn't just a cold. It's not just a flu. It causes cardiovascular issues, and it does some issues with cognitive function. And watching the world right now and listening to some of the interviews by so-called leaders, it's like, okay, we knew you were sociopaths, but man, you've gone way off into psychotic land. It's nuts. And don't be fooled by Tucker Carlson. Okay, Tucker Carlson has some kind of end game. He's very fascinating. Marjorie Taylor Greene's statements actually don't surprise me. I don't have a birth time for her, but I have looked at her potential placements, and she does have Mars in Cancer. So I'm not very surprised she's kind of for the country, and I know I'm not saying she's a patriot, but she thinks she is. And her, America First would be very, very enticing to her and her beliefs around what that is. I'm not saying I agree with her, but I'm not surprised she's taking the stance she is. It's not a huge surprise. We don't do anybody any favors when we just assume people are stupid. Let's put it this way. Idealists and dogmatists, people who are zealots in their belief systems, not all of them are dumb. A lot of them are very bright people. I'm not saying she is. I think she's cunning. I think she's smart enough to be where she's at and stay there. You can call her stupid all you want, but she's managed to be where she's at. However, she's managed to stay there. And I always tell my clients, the bar's pretty low. What's stopping you? And I say all of this because let's talk about this astrology. Let's talk about this astrology. July 4th, and it actually starts late on July 3rd. We have Venus conjunct Uranus in Taurus. And then later in the morning, we have Venus moving into Gemini. Venus conjunct Uranus is a really fascinating energy, and it's not that it isn't explosive. It could be. I don't think explosive is in a bad way. I think for a lot of people in your inner life, this could be very empowering. You might get messages from your guides. You could get some insights that maybe radically help you reshape your belief system. Anything that's kind of in your way of allowing good things in, your heart could open up more. And it's also maybe shaking up some of the social constructs around what it is to be a woman. Okay. There could be surprise meetings. There could be those types of things. I think the economy pumps a little bit. Not sure why that would happen. It could be something around trade agreements, currencies. It could even be something that it may not be that big, beautiful bill. Maybe that's why, or maybe something gets slashed out of it. I don't think he's going to get what he wants necessarily with this. Neptune stations retrograde on the 4th. Neptune stations retrograde. And that's truth coming out. So that's going to be interesting. So July 4th is a pretty big day. Somebody mentioned that the moon would be in Scorpio on July 4th, and that happens kind of in the afternoon. But, I mean, the moon, I don't know. It'll be in opposition with Uranus. Both ways are right. It's actually Uranus. But it'll be in opposition on the 6th, the moon and Uranus. We could see some sizable seismic activity that day. California, don't freak out. I'm not talking about you specifically. I think we could see some really big windstorms kick up. We could see some dust storms kick up as well, weather-wise, between the 4th and the 10th. July 6th, we have Venus sextile Saturn and Venus sextile Neptune, which Neptune will be a retrograde. That's going to be so I think there's interesting economic news, and I don't mean interesting necessarily in a bad way. There could be some good news around that. Venus doesn't tend to give us too much bad news. So there's some very interesting activity coming up. Am I saying it's the downfall of the person you want to see gone? No, I'm not saying that. I don't think we get so lucky, my friends. But it does appear to be a little bit interesting as we go through that. And I'll read through the headlines here in a minute. I know I said I wasn't going to, but I'm like, yeah, I can read through this week. Uranus ingresses Gemini on the 7th. And it will be in a trine with Pluto as well. It'll be in a trine with Venus as well. That's a grand air trine, even though Pluto's retrograde. This could be entirely interesting weather. I would expect some big windstorms with this. With a little bit of luck, we could have a really big tornado or a big hurricane or something whip up and like dodge a major building. But it could also be there's commercial loss as well. I don't think it will be the commercial loss as much as big wind. And we got the full moon on July 10th. We got the full moon in Capricorn on July 10th. That's its own thing, and I'll talk about that next week. I don't think we have to be too worried about it. We've got Saturn stationing retrograde and Mercury stationing retrograde this month. So Neptune, Saturn, and Mercury. Now, I like to think of retrogrades as slowing the roll. It's like we've had everything except Pluto in direct motion. And notice, what's that been like? Full speed ahead. We've just really been lucky. We've got Pluto as an anchor kind of dragging behind us, keeping us from falling off the cliff. So there's that. It's gonna be interesting kind of to watch with Neptune spilling the beans. Saturn retrograde does not help dictators. So authoritarians all over the world get kind of slowed and tripped up by this. And Mercury retrograde is going to force us to reevaluate process, procedure. We could see some pushes against free speech, big shock. But there's going to be some also beans spilled with this Mercury retrograde. Mercury sextile Venus on the 18th. That's probably more beans getting spilled. And we could hear about like a new kind of airplane or a new kind of communication. Then we've got Leo season starting on July 22nd, and the sun will be sextile Uranus. We could see a solar storm with that. Venus square Mars. Now, Venus square Mars isn't bad. Okay, first of all, in synastry, that's great chemistry. It's very good chemistry. So from Venus in Gemini squaring Mars in Virgo, I think we're going to find out who's paying who's got how many cookies and who's in bed with who politically. That could be interesting. And this is global. It's not just in one spot. July 24th, the sun is trine Saturn, sun is trine Neptune. We got a new moon, and the sun is opposing Pluto. So that's going to be interesting. That's an early new moon in Leo. And of course, we'll have an episode where we talk about that, and I'll walk patrons through their intentions. July 30th, we've got Venus moving into Cancer. Venus moving into Cancer. And that's going to square off. It's not on here. It'll be for August. But Venus will be squaring off with Saturn and Neptune. And that could be economy stuff. And then we've got the Sun conjunct Mercury on the 31st. And everybody's going to be like, it's a Kazemi. Remind me to talk about all the terms again and disillusion you from the idea of how special it is. So again, this is from the 2025 year ahead. July starts with a historic heat index in many places around the world. And if you're in the southern hemisphere, you could have like deep cooling. Let's see, we've got really weird weather events. You know, AMOC is probably going to be up on deck. People talking about the Atlantic current, that Atlantic conveyor belt. That current's getting messed up and it's starting to slow down. It's not going to happen overnight though. It's kind of a slowing, but it's going to definitely impact countries all over the world. We could see some really hot rain, wind, strange weather patterns with little relief, especially in the developing world. But Europe, Asia, and Australia, they're getting hit. This could be issues with power, drinking water, not just from the storms, but we could see issues around power grids not being able to handle the load from air conditioning, etc., or heating. Drinking water and drinking supplies, water supplies. And this is global. This could be like, you know, India and Pakistan having a deal. Israel has messed with Jordan's water supply for a long time. That kind of thing. By the way, I think we'll hear a little bit about Jordan coming up as well in July, including the King of Jordan. So could see an economic crisis with private equity firms, global banking, national reserve banks. This is global. In more than one country, could see failure of an insurance company. And this could be after like big storms. So if we see big hurricanes come in. And a crisis with insurance company or companies. Now, I wrote these back in May/June of 2024. The big beautiful bill may pass. Indeed, it could. I don't think it's not going to get passed. It's not getting passed with everything. Like he's not getting the utter victory he wants, but I think it's going to deeply impact the healthcare system. And I hate calling it healthcare because I don't think health insurance is part of healthcare, but that's what people call it. So hospitals or insurance companies may be going through it. Any border conflicts in Europe could see an expansion into outright conflict. This is probably with Ukraine and Russia, but it could be other Eastern European countries, you know, Bosnia, Serbia, that kind of thing. We could see border issues. Poland, you know, those have been up on deck all year. We could see outright conflict with missiles, drones, incursions, or sabotage. Could see use of tactical strikes, tactical weapons. This could be Iran and Israel again. July 6th, we could see a big earthquake in China, Southeast Asia, Japan, or Taiwan. This could cause a large tsunami. That's a possibility. July 5th, 6th, maybe 7th. Those aren't the only places, though. If you live in a seismic region, I really suggest that you have a go bag, because Uranus leaving Taurus, it makes things rock and roll. So, you know, it might not be a huge earthquake, but just make sure you have a go bag and you have things. They're disconcerting. If you've never experienced an earthquake, and although I will say I would much rather deal with an earthquake than a tornado, not lying. But it could be tornadoes too. So Mama Gaia's got some things to say to us as Uranus exits Taurus. July 7th through the 9th, we could see big windstorms, geomagnetic storms. So I talked about that. Issues with communication, transportation, could see a big interstate accident, car pileups, or issues with air transportation, helicopters and military aircraft, and or turbulence affects many commercial flights. It doesn't mean it's everybody's going to fall out of the sky and die. Okay. And if you're traveling, no, I can't tell you if it's safe for you to travel. Okay. Yeah. Everybody's astrology is different. So use your spidey senses, people. The full moon brings back political crisis, or it brings political crisis to light. The West Coast, especially the Pacific Northwest, including British Columbia, needs to be aware of potential seismic activity. It's most likely offshore. Okay, so that means out in the ocean. It could be, but it could be one around 6.0 on the mainland. So, it's something I'll keep an eye on. But I don't think it's going to be a big earthquake. I could be wrong. I don't in the Pacific Northwest, because there's been a couple of times where I thought it had potential, and there were like little rumbles, or there was a 6.0 way out at sea, nowhere near land. So I'm not convinced it's going to be huge. But I am also not a seismologist. So just be aware. We could see spiritual or religious visions, experiences may be disqualified by various world religions. And it might backfire. Now, here's what I think about that. Now that we're, about a year away from when I wrote these, it may be psychosis. So when you think about it, you had that really creepy guy crucify a pastor of a church in Arizona. That's spiritual psychosis. God's talking to me. You listen to Peter Thiel, and he's, thinking the Antichrist is a one world government. Delusional. Tell me you don't understand theology without telling me you don't understand theology. So, why these people are considered geniuses, I'll never know. I think we'll see a lot of water rights issues up on deck. We're going to see a lot like firestorms. So these could be lightning storms that cause wildfires. I think we're going to, the West may see it, but it could be the plains. I think the plains might get lit up from lightning. Water rights are back up on deck. There could be Western states are going to be fighting over water, possibly. End of July is super hot. It's very volatile, and the storms build in intensity. We could see a massive erosion event between the 24th and the 27th. That's landslide, rock slides, sinkholes, things like that. It could also be a glacial melt. Mexico could see increased seismic activity as well in the interior of the country, like around Mexico City, especially as Mars makes its way into a little deeper into Virgo. And July, July 31st is kind of a dynamic day. It's very dramatic, like fireballs, things like that. We could see solar storm possible, meteor showers, things, the lights in the sky that happened, the fireballs that came into the southeast of the United States in June. We could have something like that happen. So again, if you want the full meal deal, that's not all there is to that. That's not all there is to that. There's a full meal deal up on the Patreon. This week, what we can expect in the headlines. All right, June 29th through July 1st. Here's what's up in the headlines. We've got the moon in Virgo showing us the potholes and where there's shaky ground. So we could have erosion events, landslides, sinkholes, rock slides, avalanche, glacial melt, especially in the Alps, Himalayas, seismic activity, volcanic or destabilized ground in Southeast Asia, Asia Pacific region, including the island nations in like Tonga, Fiji, things like that. We could see seismic activity or hurricanes, tropical storms that cause road failures, massive flooding in U.S. Southwest, Mexico, Ecuador, Peru, Chile, Argentina, Honduras, Costa Rica, Panama. I don't have it all written down, but general vicinity, that area, possible. Could see it in the Caribbean as well. Global financial markets or trade deals on shaky ground or called off, or new trade groups announced. I'm wondering if Trump isn't going to back off on tariffs. There's some kind of good news that comes out to bounce the markets, I think, up a little bit, but we'll see. Animal behavior, wildlife, and new species are discussed. Higher education, enrollment, administration, or changes to financial aid. That could be something to do with the big, beautiful bill. Remember, I don't make the rules, guys. I can't change what's going on. I'm just reporting what I see. Bridges, pipelines, and other connective structure under strain or damaged. International agreement or ceasefire breached. Supreme Court makes important decision probably on the 30th. Not in Trump's favor, most likely. We'll see about that. Not sure what it is. It could be an international court as well. Issues with container ships, train cars, and trucking in regards to supply chain. So we could see a strike of workers. There could be an accident, a blockage of a like I don't know, not the Straits. Maybe the Straits of Hormuz get blocked, or the Red Sea. Or remember when that remember that tanker got stuck in the Red Sea? Kind of like that. But there's issues with the supply chain and getting things delivered. We could, again, I've got big storms in this multiple times. It could be a hurricane, cyclone, tornado, cycling wind with extreme precipitation. It could also be dust or sandstorms, big snow in the southern hemisphere, or icy conditions. Coastal storms and big erosion events. Seismic activity above a 5.0 in the Pacific Northwest, Northern California, Southern California, east of the Cascades or Sacramento, California, Nevada border, July 1st, most likely. If it's in those locations, it's not a given. It's just a possibility. Okay. Issues with the U.S.-Mexico border, and I know there's issues there every day, but this is what is potentially in the headlines. Water rights and supply discussed. Attacks on judges and civil servants. This is global, and given the recent decisions coming out of the Supreme Court, it could be that there's issues around their domiciles, etc. We could see assassination attempts, global and potential disruption or illness of a major world leader. Don't get your hopes up. Look, nobody wants it to happen more than me, but not for the same reasons as everybody else. I'm like, come on, prediction. Flu, COVID, and other viruses. 29th and 30th, that could be up on deck. We could hear about global health matters. Remember, transits are global, and accidents or political upheaval can also be big storms and natural events, and vice versa. July 1st through the 4th, the moon in Libra is losing its cool. Have you ever seen a Libra angry? Not so pretty. I know I used it last month too, but you know what? It's true. Okay? It's just true. I have a Libra moon. Don't piss me off. Tensions flare in the Levant. Iran and Cyprus could have announcements from Turkey, Greece, or the Vatican. Big wind, temperature changes, issues with air or ocean currents. Winds could be extreme and hot. Air traffic disruptions due to labor strikes and contract negotiations. Massive transportation failures Air accidents or planes grounded. Airspace could be closed. Public protests continue. Issues outside of courts and public offices, satellites and communication disruption, internet failures, and technical issues in general. Issues with dams, levees, major waterways or canals. Noted violence in urban centers. International organizations have crisis, threats of war, threats of nukes, warring words. Military units go rogue or paramilitary. I realized when I was looking at those, ICE agents fall into that. So, or there could be sabotage of military equipment or violence at a U.S. base or some other military base, but there could be violence. Elon Musk will be in the spotlight. Donald Trump could have some strain. He's not getting his 4th of July the way he wants it. I'm going to say that. There's something he doesn't get. Supreme Court or other high court judges, global or international court is in the news. So it's a high-level court or justices. Donald Trump under strain or loses something in court. It could be a legal matter, but it could also be he doesn't get his way. That could be it. Could be a health complaint. Don't get your hopes up. Lawyers under attack, under threat, or could see actual physical harm to legal professionals, including judges and justices. And again, given the last few rulings, that is a potential. New information leaked about U.S. officials and or financial matters to do with elected official. Public violence, mass shooting, stabbing, or an issue with domestic violence. Could see warlike behavior, bombings, attacks, ceasefires fail, extreme violence on borders, or missile launch to a serious target. We could see a politician unseated, deposed, or removed. And that could go for CEOs as well. Popular uprisings, increase in numbers around the world. And we could see a terrorist attack globally. UK might have a little bit of wibbly-wobbliness politically. And then to round out the week, we've got July 4th through the 6th. The moon in Scorpio is about to act on an old grudge. We've got big rain, huge thunder, lightning, hail, very damaging amounts of water or high tides. That's global. Discussion about food safety and regulation. Could hear of a new community program to feed at-risk youth or the unhoused. That's something we could hear about. That's going to be like in more local news, probably. Borders see violence. Romania, Moldova, Estonia, Latvia, Finland, Poland, Belarus, Hungary, Georgia, Israel, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, India, Pakistan, U.S., Mexico, and Greece. Cold case could resurface, and we could see one solved. We could see a sizable earthquake over 6.0, Turkey, Greece, Mexico, Chile, or New Zealand. All possible over a 5.0. Internet disruptions, payment gateway failures, hacking. And this could be bank, ATMs, things like that. Issues with oil refineries, gas pipelines, platforms, production or pumping. Maritime accidents, attacks, piracy, insurgencies by sea. That'd be issues with Navy, commercial vessels, things like that. We could see issues in the Persian Gulf, Red Sea, Straits of Hormuz, and Suez Canal through the Mediterranean, even Panama Canal. Insurrections, attacks, and political violence. Increased tension with the USA and NATO. Assassination attempts of world leaders, political candidates, and people of note. This is global. It's just... We'll see what's going on. We could see a massive leak out of government or international organization revealed, or serious espionage allegations. And this is global. Trucking and or transportation accident, rail, shipping, etc. A big accident, mass accident, loss of life, or terrorist attack, Navy or boating accident. We can see a food poisoning, like big food poisoning, like a restaurant or a food substance or illness. And private equity firm deals with bad press or a leak. issue with a tugboat, submarine, or at a port or dry dock. So that's kind of how we end the week with the moon moving into Sagittarius. I think it moves pretty late in the day. Let me double check. I could be wrong. It could move early in the morning. I have a calendar. I know how to use it. Hang on. Let's see. Oh yeah, it's late. It's like 10 p.m. So it'll move into Sagittarius. So there we go. So exciting. So hands still have hands with us. So evening time, I think it's going to be more, we'll hear about issues in the Middle East, Asia Pacific region, Eastern Europe, maybe out of Kenya, maybe out of Djibouti, maybe out of Sudan. We're not getting a lot of news out of there. I would think more like Kenya, maybe Egypt, maybe Tunisia, Libya. Maybe. We just don't get a lot of news out of there, especially in the United States. And I know I have listeners all over the world. If I'm not mentioning an area where you live, it's not because I'm ignoring you. It's literally because, one, I'm working with my framework. So yes, a lot of my things are going to be centered on where I live. That's just how it works. And I try to be as inclusive as possible. If something's jumping out at me, but you have to remember, we don't get a lot of news for the continent of South America or the continent of, we get more for South America, but we get very little for the continent of Africa. And so I may miss things just because I have no contextual way to grab onto it. So good times at Ridgemont High, guys. Good times. Good times. Oh my goodness. I'm going to end you on a happy note. Okay. I'm going to end you on a happy note. But first let's do some patron shout outs. All right. It is time for patron shout outs. Yay. Without patrons, there would be no podcast. This podcast stays ad-free, is distributed. I'm able to hire an assistant to keep me organized. Remind me to tell you about that. I have the wonderful Tylin making the social media clips out of this now, all because patrons sponsor the podcast. If you're wondering why I'm not as big as Joe Rogan, well, besides not having sold my soul to advertisers and other things, it's because he has a big team. And I have a hearty, wonderful group of people who support my work. This is crowdfunded. We are like the NPR of astrology, which is amazeballs. And I am honored because I get to do what I am most passionate about and find new passions too, because, I never realized how much I was going to love podcasting because I started it as kind of a joke. And without patrons, none of that. None of this episode, none of this season, none of the last 5 seasons. Because I didn't start the Patreon because of the podcast. I started the podcast after I started the Patreon. I was writing horoscopes and predictions, teaching classes, and I got censored on TikTok. In fact, I got knocked off being able to do live streams for 7 days because somebody reported me for nudity. Yeah, me. I was like, and they wouldn't accept the appeal. And I'm like, I had clothes on. I don't know what your definition of nudity is. Pardon, I guess my jowls were showing. I don't know. Anyway, because of that, this podcast happened. And because somebody said, all she does is ramble, when I had all of about 60 listeners, I thought, oh, wow. That's 60, 65 people I don't know listening to my podcast. I hadn't even told patrons about it yet. And I was like, well, maybe I should create a format. And that's when I started turning it into a show, because I was like, well, they like what I have to say, but there's no format. And I would actually open up saying, hey, I'm going to ramble. So I was like, no shit, I ramble. But I created a format. And, last year we actually made it into the top 200 all podcast chart on Spotify. Absolutely unreal. So, and by the way, we're well over 14,000 followers on Spotify. So, which I think is pretty cool. But anywho's, you can still listen to us on YouTube and iHeartRadio, and I think we are on Pandora. We're on like everywhere that podcasts can be. And it is all thanks to patrons. Big thanks to our newest patrons. I read out the list every week of our newest patrons. All right. Gotta see if I can read here. Selena, Joanna, Claire, Ella, Patricia, Cynthia, Kimmy, Van, Bjorn, Zach, Amy, Leah, Ivana, Tina, Kita, Alicia, Jen, or Kaida. I can't remember. You told me in the chats. I think it's Kaida. Okay. Alicia, Jen, Rachel, Alexandria, Ashley, Kelly, Woo Woo Mayu, Achian, Renee, Loud Lotus, Catherine, Haya or Kai. I'm going to say it's probably Haya. Just guessing. Let's see. Patty, Saf, Rachel, JJ, Jake, Sapphire, Michelle, Jeanette, Zana, Carmen, Psychic Lauren, Annie, or Annie's Mind, I should say, Misty, AG, Ann, Julie, Hanny, Lauren, C, Kelly, Lindsay, Jess, Quinn, Bailey, John, Carolina or Carolina, Jackie, Eli, Carly, Amanda, Janelle, Gabby, Christy, Wendy, Rose, Chelsea, Sonia, Leslie, Jeannie, Wearily Witchy, Mooncake, Chris, Julia, Angelica, who am I to judge? Valerie, Kath 22, Sandria, Judy, Deb, Amanda, Ariel, Kari, Amanda, Emma, Jessica, Sonia, Amber, Jackie, Kale, the tofu seller, Amy, Ashley, Talon, Courtney, Jessica, Melanie, Cassidy, Valerie, Danielle, Winter, Catherine Marie, Elena, Janice, Manda Panda, Spooky Latte, Elizabeth, J-Leaf 1609, Kelia, Cassidy, 8 Bits, Head in the Air, Cassandra, Laura B, Candace, Allie, Ariana, Leo, Dawn, Jenny, Tamika, Katie, Christine, Laura, Megan, Larissa, Alyssa, Teresa, Robin, Emily, Shannon, M. Knight, Courtney, Kim, Fake Gillian, Alexa, Katrina, Emily, Wendy, Emily, Danny, Brandilion, Dallas, Gabby, Lou, Imelda, Vermicelli, Magnifico, Joshua, Sasha, Lilith, Megan, Carradine, Jackie, Echo, Maisha. Gotcha this time. Thank you for correcting me. Rebecca, Vina, Christina, and Riley. Bump. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your support, and to the many, many, many other people. I couldn't have ever imagined this kind of support for my work in the world. I have been called crazy. I've been called a conspiracy theorist. I have been called a lot of bad names in my time, especially when I was warning people decades and decades ago, about this time period, and that people needed to be ready and they needed to do the work, both mental as well as emotional and psychological, because there's a lot of skills we need to develop to move forward. And that's why I'm doing my summer camp. Remember, you guys get your discounts on that. Alrighty. Let's talk about how to be open to the energy of that Venus-Uranus conjunction. All right, let's talk about that Venus-Uranus conjunction in Taurus at the 29th degree. That's pretty cool. Degrees don't really mean anything divinatory, meaning they don't have a specific meaning. So you've probably heard of degree theory. It's not astrology, okay? It's just not. And people can give anecdotal evidence all they want. I think it's another excuse for people who actually haven't just sat down and studied the basics, your technicals. People want to run and find some arcane meaning to something. And degree theory is not a thing. However, anaretic degrees are traditional astrology. And 0 degrees is wildcard energy. It has all the potential of the sign. It can go in any direction. The 29th degree shows the maturity of the sign. And if we look at the transit of Uranus and what was going on since 2019 until now, we know the trajectory of that energy. We know how it's played out. We've been able to observe it. Okay, astrology isn't about getting a reference book and going, okay, Uranus and Taurus, what does it mean? Yeah, and it only means what this one author wrote. That's not how we do astrology, okay? Those are guideposts and those are starting places. When you're an actual astrologer, you are able to see and observe how that energy is playing out. We know what happened in the past, but in the past, there were other transits at play. Okay, so nothing was exactly where it was in the past. So things are different now. We have Pluto in a different place. We have Saturn in a different place. We have, Neptune in a different place. So the energy, it doesn't just express on its own. That's like, talking about your hand and your foot and your earlobe and, thinking every hand, earlobe, and foot is going to be the same when there's different shapes, different sizes, different capabilities. So we kind of know what's going to happen with Uranus. We know we've seen, and this is something we know from the past. When Uranus is in Taurus, there's an increased seismic activity, increased volcanic activity. Those are all potentials. Venus in Taurus, we know that banking sector, and I'm talking mundane astrology here. We know banking sector. We know appreciative metals with an appreciation like gold or silver are up on deck. We know food is up on deck, anything to Taurus, food, basic resources, food, water, shelter, housing, those things. Fashion to some degree, fashion with value, not fast fashion or throwaway consumables, that kind of thing. When it comes to individuals, you're not living in 1939 and 1940. We may have echoes from those, but Uranus in Taurus now, today, in 2025, has also been showing ideologies. What matters? Because Venus deals more with with, on the inside, especially with what matters. And Taurus is ruled by Venus. And so the Venus-Taurus conjunction tends to show an appreciation. It tends to show where things are increasing quickly in value. Okay. There's nothing aspecting this in a negative way in the chart. Nothing. Not a damn thing. And, there might be some asteroids. I don't use asteroids. I think if you do your study on the basics, you don't need to add anything else in. I think, again, people are so addicted to wanting the secret sauce that they don't do the work that gives them the secret sauce. It's just nuts. But anyway, so on a personal level, this is some big stuff. If you've been awake for any length at all, any length of time. Okay. On a personal level, if you've been awake for a reasonable amount of time, let's say you woke up in 2020 or you woke up in 2021, maybe you woke up in 2012, maybe you woke up in the 90s, maybe you were like me and you never got to be asleep. Just that happens. But if you've been doing the work over the last few years, if you've really come to hold yourself accountable, if you've really come to understanding your nature as a human being, or at least you've started the journey, this is like a little universal gifty. Okay. Venus is about magnetism. Okay. And Uranus is disruptive energy. And people always think disruptive means bad, but it's not bad. It just means it's shaking things up. Okay. It can be fun. Have you ever been stuck in a rut and then a friend said, hey, let's go to an art gallery, or let's go dancing, or let's go to this new restaurant we haven't been before? You disrupted your routine. You disrupted your boredom. You disrupted something. That disruption isn't always bad. You can disrupt a marketplace. That doesn't mean make the marketplace crash. It means you change how business is done. Okay. For all of how much I think Amazon is run by people with the morals of a paramecium, I would warn the independent bookstores when they were being driven out of business. I'm like, you got to change your business model. You got to change your business model. You've got to do things differently. You have to. You are not going to be as convenient as somebody pressing a button on their phone or their computer. You need to do something that gives people a reason to be here. Period. And they'd be like, well, I do business my way. They were unwilling to adjust, innovate, and change. All right. We can blame Amazon, and Amazon holds a lot of guilt in this. But if you refuse to change during times of change, you get left behind. Okay. So we have this opportunity where there's an immense amount of beneficial disruption, and you have to be willing to accept what's coming in. So instead of, I do it this way, because remember, Taurus is stubborn AF. I do it this way. This is what I like. I don't like this. I won't try this because I had it once 35 years ago and I'm not doing it. Right? Oh, come on. Come on. That's silly. It might have changed. Your taste buds might have changed. Right? We are in a time of massive systemic change. Nothing in 5 years is going to look like it looks right now. Not the bad stuff, not the good stuff. We're going to be in change. I can't even imagine what the microphones are going to look like, or how they'll behave, or what the sound interface is going to be like, or what camera I'm using. Okay. In 5 years, it will be drastically different from where we sit today. And if you are going to dig your heels in and say, but the world is supposed to work this way. I was told this. They promised me when I was a kid, the whole, if you go to college, you'll get a good job and blah, blah, blah. I'm not saying don't go to college. Not at all. But that lie was old a long time ago. That lie was old when I was getting out of college. It wasn't an automatic guarantee of employment. Okay. And if you're going to hang on to how things used to be instead of lean into what's possible next, you will be left behind, period. You want to, if we can bitch and moan about AI all we want, but if you don't learn how to use it, manipulate it, play with it, make it work for you, you're going to be left behind, just like the internet, just like, e-commerce, just like TikTok, just like the computer itself, just like our cell phones. People at one point thought those were a joke. People at one point said they were a fad or a trend and they were going to go away. It was nothing but a toy. If you don't keep up, you get left behind. And I'm not talking 5D left behind. I just mean it makes it harder. A lot of times people are afraid of being early adopters. And the faster you adapt and learn, the more ahead of the curve you can be. Okay? Super important to know that. Super important to know that. So, that's when we're looking at the astrology of the time we live in. For you personally, yes, if you get offered a tech gadget, if you get a trial period or offered to beta test something, say yes to that. This is yes and energy. If you have an insight, which is an opportunity, if you have an insight, if your guidance gives you a message, if you have a visual or a vision or a very strong dream and you wake from it and it's positive, we're not talking about negative messages. We're talking about positive messages. You need to follow it. Go down the rabbit hole. Okay? You could have an energetical experience when Venus is conjunct Uranus on the 3rd or 4th of July. And that could be your heart center or your throat center opening. You may say things that you can't believe you're saying. You might outright channel, okay? Or you may have just a widening and a warmth of this. By the way, my camera's not going in and out. It's following my hands. You might have this warmth spread throughout your heart center. Let it happen. You don't have to do anything to make this energy happen. This energy is going to happen regardless. Okay. There's nothing, you don't have to activate it by pulling a lever. You don't have to say a special prayer. You don't need to do a ritual. You don't need to light a candle. Like a lot of people are so addicted to having to do something to receive something. The universe isn't handing out brownie buttons. It's not a school marm putting you through lessons. It is not demanding a goddamn thing of you. And this transit is proof of that. It is a reward. That reward isn't based on good behavior. That reward is for being physical. Just breathing. Okay? The universe doesn't give a fuck about our morality. And I know we want to think about people burning in the layers of hell and being on a spit over a roasting fire. And it doesn't really work that way. Unless you have a really, really strong belief when you die and you're, like people who are zealots, they may experience that for a moment. If they have a really strong belief because they created a thought form around it. But it doesn't even last long. They'll come to clarity and go, oh, wow, that wasn't real. Because the universe doesn't care. The universe is a very neutral space. It's very neutral. It's not sitting there in judgment. That idea of condemnation for behavior is a control mechanism. It's like why people believe in 5D and it's why people believe in ascension and new earth is because they never deconstructed that horrendous theology of the rapture that is fully designed to keep people in line. And the reason why they resonated with it and it felt comfortable or it felt like truth is because they never deconstructed. They just left a building, but they didn't deconstruct their beliefs. And that's easier said than done, but it isn't impossible, right? So when people resonate with an ideal, it doesn't mean it's true. It feels right. No, it feels comfortable. That's what it feels. It feels comfortable. You're used to this idea that some people are going to make it, some people aren't. And when we all really have the same experience, we're all born and we all die. Period. Everything else in between is called living. And Uranus conjunct Venus is an opportunity to really let in just this deliciousness of life. For all the shitty things going on in the world, the sun is still rising and setting. For all the shitty, horrific things that are going on in the world, birds still fly in the sky. For all the shitty things going on in the world, people are still falling in love. People are falling out of love. People have the immense honor of grief because you only grieve as deep as you love. If you don't love somebody, it's just, oh, they died, right? We are here for the ride. We are not here to get brownie points. We might gain experience points through our physicality as long as we're living. Some of them might be applied to wisdom. Some might be intelligence. Some might be strength. Some might be charisma. And if you play D&D, you know what I'm talking about, or tabletop role playing, right? That Venus conjunct Uranus is a chance to break free of ideals and beliefs that hold you back. It's an amazing time to be open to the delicious feeling of being loved and appreciated by the universe. Whereas the universe is pretty neutral about what we do, good and bad, because there is already physical consequence in the physical earth. We have natural consequences. They could come through our health. They could come through gravity. Again, if you're running with scissors, you'd be like, but I haven't seen that guy I don't like get his karma. We don't always get to see other people's karma. You don't know what his karma is. That's not your business. Your business is yours. Your karma is yours to manage. Nobody else's. Nobody else's. It is always fun to have a little schadenfreude at somebody's expense when we don't like them. I totally get it. Totally get it. Me too. I'd like to see some no good ne'er-do-wells face their consequences. But you know what? It's not my business either. I'm my business. You're not even my business. Like, what you do with this information is not my business. My business is to give it. Your business is to do with it what you will. You want it, take it. You don't want it, leave it. If it clicks 3 years from now, great. I'm not in charge of how you use the information. The heart and throat centers opening, if they've been a little stuck, if they've been a little congested, and it isn't chest pain. Okay, like if you're having chest pain, please get medically checked out. But there'll be a warmth, an opening. You'll feel it. There'll be an ease. Same as the throat. If you have trouble speaking up, or if you feel like there's a ball in your throat, like a knot or a lump, and I'm not talking a physical lump, you got a physical lump in your throat, go get it checked out. Energetical, like you just can't quite speak. Maybe you're afraid of recrimination. Maybe you don't even know why. This may move that block. You might suddenly burst into song. You might yell. You might, words might come out, or you may just be urged to write. Don't make a big deal out of it. Just go with it. That whole I don't know if this was real or not. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. All that is ego, my dears. Notice I didn't call you my beloveds. I will never do that. Just go with it. Don't make it into a big deal. Every single human being is psychic. Every single human being is intuitive. Doesn't always mean you're going to be a professional. It doesn't mean you're great at it. But learning to trust your instinct and your intuition is very important. And Uranus deals with the higher mind. It's the higher octave. It's the crown. And in conjunction with Venus, which governs the throat. But the two together really kind of ramp up the heart center. What most of you need to do is cool off your solar plexus. Just saying. Too many people are overactive in that department and not developed enough between the head and the root. The solar plexus is wide open and running the show. That's the fear. That's the drama. That's the over-emotionality. That's the stuck in the astral realm, which is very illusionary. I know people think it's cool, but there's cooler places. It's a good energy. If we're going to judge it, it's good. This Venus conjunct Uranus. And it gives you the opportunity to open into new pathways. But you can't be staring at everybody else's business if you want this to work. You got to work on you. You can't look at the rest of the world. You got to look at you. You could see beautiful visions. You could see patterns in the fireworks smoke. That means something to you. You could be inspired to make something. You could meet somebody, and I'm not talking about the love of your life. You could meet your next best friend. You could, there could be a puppy that shows up, or the cat distribution system says, hey, it's your turn, right? There's gifts on the way. All you have to do is say yes. That's it. That's your role. Accept it and say thank you. If you figure out your guidance, if you listen to your guidance, everybody has guides. And they're talking to you all the time. They don't shut up. They don't get mad at you. They don't get frustrated with you. None of that. None of that. Anybody who tells you your guides are disappointed or, act like a codependent mother, that's on them. They're not very good at what they do because your guides are never frustrated. We might joke about it. I always say, I got an army of them, of protectors and guides. And I think on a Friday night, sometimes they sit down at a bar, but that's a joke. Never once are they disappointed or frustrated. It is not easy to be a human being in the physical realm. That is why we have guides and guidance. It's not because we're stupid. It's because they're like, whoa, this is really hard. Here's some support. Accept it. Don't make a big deal out of it. There's no drama around it. Drama around it, I don't know my guide's name and what am I supposed to do with it? That's ego. Enjoy it. That's what you're supposed to do with it. That's it. That's it. It's that simple. Enjoy it. Accept the love offering from the universe, from your guides, from your spirit team, whatever you want to call it. Because it's fuel to move you forward. You don't have to do anything professionally with it. You can if you want. But it isn't necessarily a sign that you're meant to if we're talking about being psychic or intuitive or any of the occult matters, divinatory matters. You can be good at it and never charge a dime for it ever. Or make it a business. But you might get inspired to have a business, and it might not have anything to do with funky rocks. Or it could be a perfume business. It could be a floral business. It could be you're in your garden and you see fairies. It could be any of that. Life is a choose your own adventure. Remember those books? That's what life is. Possibility and probability. This is a chance to change the probability of your life. The possibility is wide open, but this is a chance to change course. And you change course not by forcing something, but by accepting something. And it's accepting something good. I think I'm going to leave you there. I think you're going to have a really good week. Let me know in the comments on YouTube, Spotify, and the Patreon, what good is coming your way, especially at the end of the week. I look forward to hearing that. And I hope it helped. If you want to know more details about how to use the Venus-Uranus conjunction, and if you're in the Patreon, then you're gonna get a live from me about how to do that. But if you want to catch that live, you can join the Patreon for $5 and up. We'll get the run through on how to make the most out of this energy through your astrology chart.